He drove her home. He watched her walk inside. He saw the garage door close behind her. And then he left. That should have been the end of the night. But sometime between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m., in a window of just 41 minutes, an 84-year-old woman vanished from her own home. No forced entry. No broken locks. No signs of struggle. Just silence. And blood on the front porch. Her pacemaker transmitted its final signal at exactly 2:28 a.m. Not a malfunction. Not a medical emergency. A ending. And the last person who saw her alive? He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't an intruder. He was family. This is the Nancy Guthrie case. And what investigators uncovered over the next 85 days will disturb you in ways you are not prepared for. Before we go any further, understand this. Nancy Guthrie was not a headline. She was a real woman. 84 years old. Living quietly in one of Tucson's most peaceful neighborhoods, Catalina Foothills. A place where neighbors notice everything. Where routines are consistent. Where life moves slowly and safely. Or so everyone thought. Nancy had one medical dependency that kept her alive: her pacemaker medication. Something she never went anywhere without. Until the night she disappeared. She didn't take her medication. She didn't take her phone. She didn't take anything. She left in her pajamas. In the middle of the night. Without a trace of where she was going or why. And here is what makes this case different from every other missing persons case you have followed. This wasn't random. This wasn't a stranger. And this was not an accident. What happened to Nancy Guthrie was planned weeks in advance by someone who knew her home, her schedule, her camera system, and exactly how much time they had to do what they came to do. And by the time investigators realized how calculated this truly was, the trail was already cold. February 1, 2026. By all accounts, a completely normal evening. Nancy had spent the night at her daughter Annie's home. Dinner. Conversation. Nothing unusual. No arguments. No tension. Just family time. The kind of night nobody remembers until they have to. Later that night, Annie's husband, Tommaso, drove Nancy home. That part was never questioned. He arrived at her residence in Catalina Foothills. He waited. He watched her enter. He confirmed the garage door opened. He saw her go inside safely. And then he left. Simple. Routine. Completely unremarkable on the surface. But that moment, that ordinary, uneventful goodbye, became the last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie alive. After that, the timeline fractures. At 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera went offline. Not a power outage. Not a technical glitch. It was accessed remotely. With the correct credentials. By someone who didn't guess their way in, they logged in. They knew exactly what they were doing and exactly when to do it. And 41 minutes later, at 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker transmitted its final signal. Two independent systems. Both interrupted. Within the same narrow window. That is not coincidence. That is control. When authorities arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home, what they found raised immediate concern. The front door was open. Blood was on the porch. Her medication, the one thing keeping her alive, was still inside. And Nancy was gone. But here is where the investigation took its first damaging hit. A source close to the case later revealed something deeply troubling. The first supervisor on scene had no prior experience handling a homicide investigation. None. In the earliest hours of a case like this, the first 60 minutes are everything. Evidence degrades. Scenes get contaminated. Witnesses forget details. Digital trails go cold. And if the person leading that response doesn't know what they are looking at, critical opportunities disappear forever. The question investigators would later ask quietly, internally, was whether those early mistakes cost them their best chance at finding Nancy alive. Because while time was being wasted, whoever was responsible was already moving. Already covering tracks. Already putting distance between themselves and what happened inside that house. Let's talk about what investigators actually found, because every single piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. No forced entry. No broken locks. No cracked frames. No shattered glass. Nothing. In investigations like this, absence tells a story just as loudly as presence. If no one forced their way in, then either Nancy opened that door herself or whoever entered never needed to force it in the first place. They already had access. The camera system. This is the detail that changed everything. Nancy's home camera system didn't malfunction that night. It didn't lose power. It didn't glitch. It was accessed remotely using the correct login credentials. Not a hack. Not a breach. A login. Whoever interacted with that system knew the username. Knew the password. Knew exactly which camera to disable and exactly when to do it. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from research. It comes from familiarity. Repeated exposure. Time spent inside that environment. The pacemaker's signal. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker transmitted its final data point. Medical devices like this don't just stop without reason. That timestamp, that precise, documented, irrefutable moment, gave investigators something rare in a missing persons case. An exact window. Everything happened between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m. 41 minutes. And someone who acts within a 41-minute window without leaving chaos behind didn't figure it out in the moment. They rehearsed it. The DNA evidence was recovered from the scene. But it wasn't clean. Mixed samples. Multiple contributors. Overlapping profiles. Separating usable identities from a mixed DNA sample takes time, advanced software, and precision. One confirmed match, that's all it takes to shift the entire case from possibility to proof. You study the environment first. You test reactions. You measure response times. You observe visibility. You do something small just to see what happens next. January 11th was that test. January 24th. A second date quietly flagged by investigators. Never fully explained publicly. But significant enough that Nancy's family specifically asked the public to go back and check their cameras from that date. That single request tells you everything. This wasn't a single moment of opportunity. It was a sequence. Multiple points. Connected by timing. Building towards something. February 1st. The execution. And cell tower data confirmed what investigators already suspected. Devices present on January 11th appeared again on January 24th and showed up once more near the time Nancy disappeared. Coincidence doesn't repeat itself with precision. But planning does. Cases like this don't break open dramatically. They close quietly, methodically, one confirmed detail at a time. And that is exactly what happened here. Digital movement data showed devices shifting away from the residential area not in random directions but along a specific path. Toward terrain that offered distance, cover, and concealment. The desert. Search efforts followed that data. Not broadly. With precision. At the same time, forensic analysts continued working on the DNA samples recovered from the scene. Mixed profiles take time to separate. But once separated, they don't suggest. They identify. And when that identification aligned with the digital patterns, the cell tower data, the camera access logs, and the established timeline, everything pointed in the same direction. Not toward a stranger. Not toward a random intruder. Toward someone who had been inside that home before. Someone who knew the system. Someone who had been watching, testing, and preparing for weeks. The case had its answer. Nancy Guthrie's body was found. and Tommaso was arrested. The motive, after everything, was simple: greed, inheritance, property, money. The oldest motive in the history of crime. An 84-year-old woman, who trusted her family, who spent her last evening having dinner with people she loved, was murdered for what she owned. She didn't fight back. She couldn't. She never saw it coming. She had no reason to. And the person responsible had been standing next to her for years, waiting. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She lived quietly. She trusted her family. She deserved to grow old safely in her own home. She deserved better than this. Pause. If you have any information, no matter how small, contact the FBI at 1-800-CAL-FBI. There is a $1.1 million reward currently being offered. You can remain completely anonymous. Because in cases like this, one detail changes everything. Nancy Guthrie was not just a story people followed online. She was a person. And now, finally, she has justice.